The Seattle Mariners suck right now. If you watched that last game against the Guardians, you probably don't want to watch any more Mariners baseball for a while, but let's break down the 3 reasons why the Mariners are so bad right now, because I think that if they can dial in these couple of things, the Seattle Mariners are going to be really, really good, but if it doesn't happen, then we're in for a very, very long season, and it all starts at the top. With the top of this Mariners lineup, they just aren't producing. Julio Rodriguez, Jorge Polanco, J.P. Crawford, and Mitch Garver, those 4, I said in the podcast, the Mariners are only going to go as those 4 will take them. And the big thing in 2024 was that the Mariners were going to cut down on their strikeouts, and they just haven't. In the first 7 games of the year so far, the Mariners are 3-4. They've struck out 74 times, and as a team, they're hitting 196, 261, 289. In 2023, the Mariners have struck out like 63 times, I think it was, in the first 7 games. Now, keep in mind, they were 2-5 in the first 7 games. So, on paper, at least in the win-loss column, the Mariners are better right now through the first 7 games than they were in 2023. Not that that's hard, because they sucked. But you can see here the offensive numbers for the Mariners looked a lot better in 2023 to start the year than they have so far in 2024. As a team, they hit 222 in the first 7 games of 2023, and they had 6 home runs in those 7 games. So far in 2024, they're hitting 196, and they have 4 total home runs in 7 games, again, while striking out 74 times. So you look at this team and you say, Colton, this is the team that Mariner Mojo and everyone else kind of told us is better in 2024. And I still think that they will be, because again, you look at guys like Jorge Polanco, who's running like a 40% strikeout rate right now. He has never done anything close to that in his career. He has a career 18% strikeout rate. Mitch Garver is one of the guys who chases the least in all of baseball, and when he hits the ball hard. He's gotten a little bit unlucky here and there, especially on some of the strike calls that he got from some of the umpires. But if the Mariners' first 4 in the lineup, again, Julio, JP, Jorge Polanco, and Mitch Garver can just figure it out, I think that that's going to be so big for this lineup, because right now Mitch Haniger and Ty France are really the Mariners' only offense, which if you would have told me that coming into 2024, I would have slapped you silly. I'd say there's no shot that those 2 are going to be the ones leading the offense, but here we are. Once the big guys get going, and again, we probably hear this every year, and you're in the comment section saying blah, 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 Colton, you know, this is what we say every year. I hear you, I do, and I agree with you. But the overwhelming majority of these guys' careers say that this is not who they are. And again, we look at, like, for example, the Rangers last year. We looked at guys that were having incredible offensive years, and they did slow down a little bit. That's one of the reasons why the Mariners were only, like, a game or 2 behind them at the end of the season. The incredible offense for the Rangers slowed down. Everything regresses to the mean over 162 games for the most part. I still expect us to look up at the end of the year and see, okay, Mitch Garver hit 20-something home runs, Julio hit 30-something and is an MVP candidate, Jorge Polanco hit, 250, 260, 270, somewhere in there. I still think that's going to happen with these guys. It's just they're off to a very slow start. It just sucks seeing it coming off of a spring training where these guys looked so good. So it started at the top for the lineup, and it starts at the top for the Mariners rotation as well. Because my goodness, Luis Castillo hasn't looked great, and George didn't look great in his last outing either. Let's take a look at their numbers for the first 7 games last year. So far in 2024, in 7 games, the Mariners have a 4.22 ERA. They've given up 30 earned runs and 7 home runs, with a Ks per 9 of 8.58 and a hits per 9 of 8.58, while walking 1.97 batters per 9. In 2023, the numbers were a lot better. In the first 7 games, they had a 3.38 ERA and 64 innings pitched. They'd given up 30 runs, 24 earned runs, with a whip of 1.33, Ks per 9 of 8.16, hits per 9 of 7.59. Ks per 9 were a little down in 2023 comparatively. Walks per 9 at 4.36, and a Ks per walk at 1.87. The big change here in 2024 is the Mariners aren't walking nearly as many hitters. Again, 4.36 per 9 at the beginning of 2023 compared to 1.97 at the beginning of 2024. Huge difference there. And overall, yes, this 4.22 ERA is rough for the Mariners to start the year. But with that being said, we kind of saw how the defense was kind of the problem for the Mariners. Obviously, we know Mitch booted that ball in right field. We know JP slide tackled Jorge Polanco. We know Polanco probably should have made a play in that George Kirby game. Just so much has gone wrong for this Mariners defense recently. It's hard to put it all on the pitching. And a lot of it goes back to your ace in Luis Castillo. In his first 2 starts in 2023, he pitched 11 and 2/3 innings, gave up only 3 hits, no earned runs, and struck out 12 in those 2 games. Comparatively, so far this year, Luis has a 6.75 ERA and 10.2 innings pitched. He's given up 8 earned runs, 16 hits, and he struck out 12 again. But those 16 hits compared to the 3 that he had in his first 2 starts last year, yeah, huge difference. So what is it so far for Luis Castillo? Joe and I touched about it a little bit in the podcast where, yes, he was really good in April last year, but historically, Luis Castillo has had rough starts to years, and we expect him to only get better, right? Obviously, the big problem has been him pitching out of the stretch. He's had to pitch out of the stretch more because he's been giving up A, more base hits, and B, he's also just not had a great defense behind him. So Luis Castillo's had to pitch out of the stretch more, and he's just worse when he's out of the stretch. There's no two ways around it. It's pretty clear. When Luis Castillo pitches out of the stretch, he is just a worse pitcher. As for George Kirby, obviously we know that he lives in the strike zone. Against the Guardians, that was his problem. He was living in the strike zone so much, and they are a swing-happy team. And they were making a lot of contact on George Kirby, and the balls were just getting through. It is what it is. I mean, that's just what happened in that game versus George Kirby, and again, the defense did not help them out. So that leads us to our third problem here, and that just is the defense. The Mariners traded away, of course, Eugenio Suarez, a guy who probably should have been a Gold Glove winner last year in 2023. He, I Bleav, still leads all of MLB with 3 defensive runs saved over there at third base. Perry Hill worked his magic on Gino over there at third, and now Arizona is reaping the benefits. You look at left field defense, and Jarred Kelenic obviously is a much better defender, in my opinion, than Dominic Canzone. You look at that play in the first game of the season where Dom Canzone kind of nonchalantly ran over the ball, giving up a triple in left field. Jarred Kelenic probably doesn't do that. And of course, because we all knew that it would happen, the Mariners' big trio that left the team, Jarred Kelenic, Teoscar Hernandez, and Eugenio Suarez, have been off to hot starts with their new teams. Because of course they have been, right? We just knew that that was going to be the case, especially when the guys coming back are struggling. Josh Rojas has looked relatively decent over there offensively, but he has had some mishaps at third base defensively. Same with Luis Urias, the double clutching and whatnot. Third base defense has been a problem for the Seattle Mariners so far, but there are some bright spots. Julio has looked good defensively, which we kind of figured he would. Mitch, other than that one little mishap he had in right field, I think has looked good. Ty's looked good defensively. Cal has looked decent defensively, but there are definitely a lot of guys that you look at and you're like, what the hell are we doing here? Like, on the defensive side of things. It's early in the season. Hopefully they can get it buttoned up, because this is not the defense where when you have a Mariners pitching staff that gets a lot of ground ball outs or a lot of fly ball outs, you cannot have defense like this. Yes, the Mariners are going to strike guys out, but especially in George Kirby's case, he needs the defense behind him, and if the defense is playing like crap, then George is going to have a rough year. Yes, the Mariners are off to a rough start, but in the win-loss column, they're actually better than they were last year through the first 7 games, because welcome to baseball. Should they have an even better record than they have right now? Absolutely. There have definitely been some games that they should have won. And obviously, we got our first real clunker of the year in that game with George Kirby on the mound. But that all leads us into this series versus the Milwaukee Brewers. And Joe and I broke this series down in the latest episode of the podcast on the screen now. Go ahead and check that one out. I appreciate you guys watching this one, and go Mariners.